Here's a question that should make every NATO leader lose sleep. What happens when Russia decides to play chicken with Article 5? Friday's audacious aerial intrusion over Estonia wasn't just another routine airspace violation. It was a calculated provocation that lasted a jaw-dropping 12 minutes, featuring not one, but 3 Russian MiG-31 fighter jets brazenly cruising through NATO territory like they owned the place. But here's where it gets controversial, right? Was this really just another testing the waters moment? Or are we witnessing Putin's boldest gamble yet in his escalating game of brinkmanship with the Western alliance? Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna didn't mince words when he labeled the Friday morning breach as unprecedentedly brazen. Think about that for a moment. This is a country that's already endured 4 separate Russian airspace violations this year alone, yet even they were shocked by the sheer audacity of this latest incident. The timing couldn't be more suspicious. Just over a week earlier, more than 20 Russian drones had boldly trespassed into Polish airspace during the night of September 9th to 10th, forcing NATO jets to shoot some of them down. And if that wasn't enough to raise eyebrows, this latest Estonian violation occurred merely 3 days after Russian and Belarusian forces wrapped up their joint military exercises dubbed Zapad 2025. And this is the part most people miss. These weren't amateur pilots who accidentally wandered off course. The 3 MiG-31 fighter jets operated without filed flight plans, kept their transponders deliberately switched off, and maintained radio silence with air traffic control throughout their 12-minute joyride over Vaindloo Island, approximately 100 kilometers from Estonia's capital, Tallinn. For those unfamiliar with aviation protocols, let me break this down. Flying without a flight plan is like driving without a license. Turning off transponders is equivalent to removing your car's license plate and driving in the dark without headlights. Ignoring air traffic control? That's like refusing to stop for police sirens. When military aircraft do all 3 simultaneously while crossing international borders, it's not an accident. It's a deliberate statement. NATO's response was swift and decisive. Italian F-35 fighter jets, pushing them back across the border after they had penetrated roughly 5 nautical miles, 9 kilometers, into NATO airspace. A NATO spokesperson quickly confirmed on social media, "This is yet another example of reckless Russian behavior and NATO's ability to respond." But here's what should really concern everyone. Estonia is now considering invoking Article 4 of NATO's founding treaty, a consultation mechanism that gets triggered when any member believes their territorial integrity, political independence, or security faces a threat. While Article 4 isn't the famous Article 5, which would demand collective military response, it's still a significant diplomatic escalation that could set dangerous precedents. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas was unequivocal in her assessment. This was no accident. Her words echo the sentiment of a U.S. official who, speaking anonymously, told reporters it was tough to see how this wasn't intentional, adding that it seemed virtually impossible for multiple Russian aircraft to remain unaware of their location for such an extended period. The incident gains even more significance when viewed against Estonia's recent confrontations with Russian shadow operations. Back in May, Tallinn reported that Moscow had briefly deployed a fighter jet into NATO airspace during Estonia's attempt to intercept a Russian oil tanker suspected of violating Western sanctions, part of Russia's notorious shadow fleet designed to circumvent international restrictions. Now here's the million-dollar question that nobody wants to ask. If Russia is willing to send 3 fighter jets on a 12-minute unauthorized tour of NATO territory, what exactly are they preparing for? And more importantly, how should the alliance respond to such calculated provocations without inadvertently triggering the very conflict everyone desperately wants to avoid? Jakub M. Godzimirski, a research professor specializing in Russian security policy at the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs, offers a nuanced perspective. While the incident could indeed represent a deliberate test of NATO's resolve, it might also be purely coincidental. However, he emphasizes the crucial context. This happens in a given context, having in mind what happened with the drone incursion in Poland a few days ago. Estonia has already summoned Russia's top diplomat in the country to formally lodge a protest and deliver an official note of complaint. But diplomatic protests and stern words have done little to deter Moscow's increasingly aggressive behavior along NATO's eastern frontier. And this is where the controversy really heats up. Some critics argue that NATO's measured responses to these provocations only embolden Russian aggression. They contend that without more forceful consequences, Putin will continue pushing boundaries until he finds NATO's breaking point. Others worry that overly aggressive responses could escalate tensions into an actual military confrontation that nobody wants. The Baltic Sea region has become a particularly volatile flashpoint, with Russian aircraft routinely flying between mainland Russia and Kaliningrad, Moscow's heavily militarized exclave wedged between Poland and Lithuania. While these flights are technically legal when conducted in international airspace, Friday's incident crossed a clear red line by penetrating sovereign NATO territory. What makes this situation even more precarious is Estonia's unwavering support for Ukraine. As one of the most vocal critics of Russian aggression within both NATO and the European Union, Estonia has consistently advocated for stronger sanctions and increased military aid to Kyiv. This vocal opposition likely makes Estonia an attractive target for Russian intimidation tactics. So here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to acknowledge. These airspace violations aren't random acts of military incompetence. They're carefully choreographed, psychological operations designed to test Western resolve, gather intelligence on NATO response times, and demonstrate Russia's ability to strike deep into alliance territory whenever it chooses. The question facing NATO leaders today isn't whether Russia will continue these provocations. It's how the alliance will respond when Moscow inevitably crosses an even more dangerous line. Because if history has taught us anything, it's that appeasement only encourages further aggression. What do you think? Are these Russian airspace violations just elaborate bluffs designed to rattle NATO? Or are they genuine preparations for something far more sinister? Should the alliance respond with even stronger military deterrence? Or would that risk escalating tensions beyond the point of no return? Share your thoughts below. Because this debate affects the security of every NATO member nation,